Day 1 of 30. Everyone online told me gentle parenting was the answer. No demands. Validate every feeling. Never just say no. And I, a Chinese mother raised on the complete opposite of all of that, decided to try it. For real. 30 days, no cheating. By day 9, I wanted to quit. By day 30, I had changed my mind about something I thought was permanent. And the ending is not what either side of this argument wants to hear. Let me tell you who I am first, because the experiment means nothing without the context. I was raised in a Chinese household where the hierarchy was as real as the walls. The parent leads, the child follows. Respect is not earned through negotiation, it is owed. When my mother said it was time to sleep, there was no conversation. And in fairness, that architecture built things in me. I finish what I start. I can sit with discomfort without needing rescue. Those are not small gifts, and I know which house they came from. But I also grew up without a single word for what was happening inside me. Anger, shame, jealousy, I felt all of them, because children are made of weather. I just had nowhere to put any of it. Feelings in our house were like water in the walls. You knew they were there. You never talked about them. You waited for them to dry. If you don't know the term, gentle parenting flips my childhood's entire order of operations. Traditional parenting treats behavior as the problem and the feeling underneath as noise. Gentle parenting says the feeling is the engine and the behavior is just the exhaust. So you go to the engine first. You don't hit, hitting hurts. And what were you feeling when you hit him? The theory? A child who understands his inner weather learns to forecast it, and a child who can forecast a storm can walk himself indoors before it breaks. Not obedience. Regulation. The child governing himself from the inside instead of being governed from the outside by fear. For years, I rolled my eyes at this so hard I could see my own upbringing. It looked like a generation of parents apologizing to their toddlers. And then one night, my son got a math problem wrong 3 times in a row, and I watched his face do the thing. The closing, the shutters coming down, the exact face I used to make at his age. The face that says, I am now going to feel this entirely alone because that is what we do. And I heard myself getting louder and sharper and more like a woman I know very well, and I thought, I am installing the same plumbing. The water's going into his walls too. That's what started this, not a trend, that face. So I made rules and taped them inside a kitchen cabinet. 1, no command without acknowledging the feeling first. Not brush your teeth now, but I know you don't want to stop playing, and it's time to brush your teeth. 2, no punishment for emotions. He can be angry. He can cry about the wrong color cup. Behavior can have limits. Feelings cannot be crimes. 3, the hard one, get curious before getting loud. First sentence a question, not a verdict. I should mention my husband because he's in this story. Raised the same way I was, maybe stricter. When I explained the experiment over dinner, he said one sentence in Chinese. In 30 days, you'll be asking your son's permission to be his mother. Then he went back to his soup. Remember that sentence. He's going to eat it later. And my son. 7 years old, sweet, sharp, and intelligent the specific way children are intelligent. Not academic intelligence. Structural intelligence. Children are small engineers of adult behavior. He can detect a change in my parenting operating system instantly and find the exploit before the developers know it shipped. Day 2, bedtime. Historically, bedtime in our house was a Chinese bedtime, not an event, a fact. 8:30 existed the way gravity exists, but under the new regime, I knelt down and said my rehearsed sentence. I can see you're sad that playing has to end. Do you want to tell me about it? And I watched the calculation move across his face like weather on a map, and he said, yes, I have a lot of feelings. 40 minutes. 40 minutes of feelings. Feelings about his Lego set, about a boy at school, about whether fish sleep, about the concept of Sunday. Around minute 30, he was visibly recycling material, and the humiliating part is that I knew what was happening, and my rules gave me no exit. I had built a system where expressing emotion pauses the clock, and handed it to a child whose entire species is famous for testing systems to destruction. As I finally closed his door, he said warmly, with no irony at all, I like the new you, Mama. I stood in the hallway and didn't know whether to laugh or call my mother to apologize for my entire adolescence. Day 4, the supermarket. He wanted a toy from the seasonal aisle, one of those plastic objects that exist purely to convert parental exhaustion into revenue. The old me had a 2-word protocol for this, and the second word was no. The new me knelt down and said, "You really want that toy? It's hard to want something and not get it." He said, louder, "So I can get it?" "No," I said, still gentle. And he cried, not quietly, while I knelt on the floor of the frozen aisle holding space, and some ancient system in my chest insisted that 4 generations of my family were watching through the ceiling and taking notes. We left without the toy. Technically, the boundary held, but I drove home feeling like I'd lost, and that low-grade sense of losing while technically winning was the whole climate of week 1. Day 7. The phone call. My mother calls on Sundays, and some combination of exhaustion and honesty made me tell her about the experiment. I explained gentle parenting to my Chinese mother in a mixture of 2 languages, neither of which contained the vocabulary I needed. There was a silence I can only describe as architectural. Then she said, translating but faithfully, "When you were 7, did I ask how you felt about homework?" "No." "And did you do your homework?" "Yes." "And are you okay?" And I opened my mouth to give her the automatic yes, the one I have given that woman my entire life, and for the first time I noticed the gap between the yes and the truth, because the honest answer was, mostly, okay in every way that can be printed on a report card, and quietly not okay in a few specific ways that took me until my 30s to find words for. In English, because my childhood never issued them in any language. I didn't say that. I said, "Yes, Mama," and we talked about vegetables. But her question stayed with me because it wasn't stupid. It was data from a woman whose method has receipts. It just also contains the system's exact blind spot. If the outside is okay, the inside must be okay, because the inside was never on the inspection list. I am okay the way a house is okay when no one has ever checked inside the walls. Honest scoreboard after week 1, 4 hours of lost bedtime, 1 supermarket incident, 0 visible improvement in behavior. If anything, worse, because a smart child in a renegotiated system spends the first week finding out where the new walls are, and my new walls were made of conversation. Day 9 is when I almost quit. It was homework, of course it was. For a Chinese family, homework is the temple, and the temple is where you find out what you actually worship. 10 subtraction problems? He decided, with the full constitutional force of a 7-year-old, that he was not doing them. I ran the protocol. I knelt. I named. "You're tired. You wish there was no homework." He agreed with all of it, the way you agree with a lawyer arguing your case for free, and then did not do the homework. 45 minutes of validation, 0 subtraction. At one point, he patted my arm, and said, "It's okay, Mama. We can try again tomorrow." Something in me went white, not red, white. I walked to the kitchen and gripped at the counter, and every ancestor I have stood up in my bloodstream at once. I could hear the sentence forming in my mother's exact intonation, the one with no question mark anywhere in it. There's a version of this video where I quit on day 9, and it would probably perform better. The algorithm loves a woman who was right all along. But standing at that counter, I made myself do the thing I'd been demanding of my son all week. I named my own feeling. Not tired, not annoyed, fear. A very specific, very cultural fear that a child allowed to skip the hard thing today becomes an adult who skips hard things forever. All week, I'd thought I was frustrated with gentle parenting because it was inefficient. Day 9 taught me I was frightened of it. Those are different problems, and I'd been arguing with the wrong one. The homework did not get done that night. I won't pretend it did. The experiment survived for a boring reason. I had said I'd do 30 days, and I am culturally incapable of failing an assignment. My mother's system saved her rival's experiment. Appreciate that irony. It's the first clue about where the story's going. Day 10, I went back to the books, because that's the other thing my upbringing installed. When you fail, assume the error is yours before blaming the method. And with humbler eyes, I found the sentence I'd skimmed past. Gentle is not permissive. The feeling is honored. The boundary is not moved. I had spent 9 days treating validation as a replacement for the boundary, when the actual instruction is to run them together. You're tired, homework is hard when you're tired, and the homework is happening now, not or, and. The difference sounds tiny. In practice, it's the entire machine. I'd been offering a trade. Enough feelings could buy an exit from any obligation. The real method offers something stranger. Your feelings are fully legitimate, and they change nothing about the requirement. Unconditional empathy, unconditional boundary. A child raised inside that combination learns what neither of my starting systems teaches alone. Emotions are real, reality doesn't yield to them, and both facts can be survived at once. So I quietly patched the system and told my son nothing, because you don't announce a patch to your most dedicated hacker. Day 11, 8:30, he deployed the exploit. I have a lot of feelings, with the confidence of a boy running a proven play, and I said, I want to hear all of them. 2 now, the rest tomorrow at breakfast, and it's teeth time. He stared at me like a man whose credit card has been declined at a restaurant he eats at every week. 2 feelings: extremely patted, teeth brushed, bedtime in 11 minutes. But here's what caught me off guard. At breakfast, I kept the promise, and he had real feelings this time. A worry about a friendship, 7-year-old geopolitics about who sits where at lunch, circling him for days without my knowing. The filibuster was fake, but underneath it were real feelings, waiting to see if the offer was genuine. The exploit and the need were using the same door. And then came day 13, the reason this video exists, late afternoon. He was building something elaborate, and it was time to leave for a haircut, and the warning was ignored. And then it was time, and I said so. I watched his whole body begin the sequence I know by heart, the stiffening, the intake of breath, the wind-up of a 7-year-old about to convert frustration into weather, and then he stopped, physically stopped, mid-escalation like a video paused, and he said out loud, angry but level, I'm angry because I wanted to keep playing. Sit in that sentence with me, because from outside it looks like nothing. A child said he was angry, but look at what happened in that room. A feeling arrived in his body, and instead of becoming behavior, thrown blocks, screaming, it became language. Information out of his mouth instead of damage out of his hands. 7 years old, and he caught the storm at the coastline and named it before landfall. I have known adults who cannot do that. I have been the adult who cannot do that. And here's the sentence I said quietly to myself in the car outside the barbershop, and it cost me something to repeat. I did not give him that. 38 years of my family's system never gave me that. 13 days of the other sides gave it to him. Then some part of what I'd been rolling my eyes at for years wasn't softness. It was engineering, of the inside instead of the outside, but engineering, with observable results in my own child on an ordinary Tuesday. Week 3 brought a test from school and a score that was, by this household's standards, not good. There's a script in my body for this exact moment. I did not write it. It was written decades before I was born in another country, by people for whom a test score was not a feeling but a forecast, of futures, of doors, of whether the family's one ticket out would be punched or wasted. He handed me the paper already doing the face, the shutters, braced for the script because children can smell an inheritance. I let the 4 seconds happen. The script rose, I didn't feed it, and I asked, how did you feel when you got this back? The shutters paused. Bad, he said. What kind of bad, he actually thought. Embarrassed because I knew those words at home. Here is where pure, gentle parenting, the vibes version, would have me stop. Validate the embarrassment, hug, snack, scene. And here's where my mother's voice, for the first time all month, said something useful instead of something loud. Because embarrassed because I knew those words at home is not just a feeling. It's a diagnosis. He didn't fail knowledge, he failed transfer. The words evaporating under pressure. And no amount of hugging fixes transfer, so we did both. I told him the embarrassment made sense, that it had happened to me. And then we got paper and practiced the words that night, not as punishment, but as the obvious next move, the way you rehearse anything that fell apart under pressure. He complained mildly, the complaint was allowed, and the practice happened anyway, feelings honored, standard held, both at once. What I banked from that day wasn't the retest. One retest proves nothing. It was that he told me the true thing. In my childhood, the true thing went into the walls. His came out and weighed less by morning. That's not softness. That's maintenance. You pay for it small, or you pay for it structural. Week 3 also showed me the failure mode, and this channel tells you the failure modes. At a playground, I watched another mother run the full liturgy, the kneeling, the naming, you really wanted a turn, after her son took another child's scooter. It was fluent and loving, and the scooter did not go back. The feelings were processed, the scooter stayed stolen. I knew exactly what I was seeing because I'd run that same broken build for 9 days myself. Validation with the boundary removed. When critics attack gentle parenting, this is usually what they're attacking. And they're not wrong about what they're seeing. They're wrong about what it's called. Permissiveness, wearing gentleness as a coat. The coat is not the problem. And day 21 belonged to my husband? Our son knocked a glass off the table, pure accident, and flinched. And I watched my husband see the flinch and recognize it, because he flinched like that for 18 years in his father's house. Instead of the reflex sentence, the careless boy sentence that was already loaded, he paused and said stiffly, like a man attempting a language he'd only read about, "It's okay. Accidents happen. What do we do now?" And our son said, "Clean it up," and got the towel. Later, doing dishes, my husband said quietly, without looking up, "Nobody ever said that to me." It's the most he's ever said about it, and it's in this video with his permission. "Leave it in," he said. "Some father needs it." He has not repeated his day one prophecy. He knows, I know, we had soup. So here's where I landed, and it's not what either side wants to hear. These two models aren't opposites. They're answers to two different questions. The gentle model answers, how does a child learn to live with what's inside him? The traditional model answers, how does a child learn to live with what's outside him? The requirements, the difficulty, the world's indifference to his preferences. Both questions are real. Both will be asked of my son whether or not I prepared him. A philosophy that answers only one isn't a philosophy. It's half of one, sold with total confidence. The most dangerous way to sell half of anything. My mother's system answered the outside question brilliantly. It gave me endurance, standards, the ability to do hard things while feeling bad, which is most of adult life. And it left the inside question not just unanswered but unasked, a cost that surfaces decades later in adults who are professionally impressive and emotionally subtitled, who love their parents deeply and speak to them in weather reports. The gentle model, run correctly, answers the inside question beautifully. Day 13 proved it. Run incorrectly, it quietly fails the outside question and produces children fluent in their own feelings and unrehearsed in the world's refusals. So in this house, we now do both, and you can steal all of it. The feeling gets named first every time. That's the Western tool, and I'm keeping it, not because it's nice, but because it's mechanical. A named feeling moves through a child like weather instead of settling in him like water in the walls. And the requirement still happens every time. That's my mother's tool, and I'll defend it to any parenting account on the internet. The feeling changes the climate of the moment. It never changes the outcome. My son is learning a sentence that will carry him further than either inheritance alone. I can feel this and do it anyway. The honest caveats, because I'd rather be small and truthful than large and useful to no one. This was 1 month, 1 child, 1 household, a taste, not a trial. My son is 7, verbal, and secure. A method that works on him may collapse on a different child. The hybrid is also the expensive option. The attention costs of gentle parenting plus the consistency costs of traditional parenting, indefinitely. And there were nights I paid neither bill and just got everyone to bed alive. Those nights are part of the data too. One more thing, the one that cost me most. I don't actually know that my mother was wrong. Her method left things in my walls, but it was built to survive storms I have never once faced. And it is very easy to renovate a house someone else built for weather you've never seen. I did the renovation anyway. I just refused to do it with contempt. Day 30 was a Tuesday, and nothing happened, and that's the ending. 8:30 came, I said it was teeth time, and he said, "I'm annoyed, but okay." And both of those clauses, the annoyed and the okay, were things I built, one with a tool from each side of the ocean. He brushed his teeth. I read to him. I turned off his light. So no, I'm not a gentle parent now, and I'm not my mother. I'm a woman with 2 toolboxes and a 7-year-old taking the best tool from each and refusing to apologize to either side for the theft. Name the feeling, do the hard thing anyway. Both. The answer was never his way or my mother's way. It was the door between them, and I had to stand in it for 30 days to see it was a door. If this video shifted something in the way you see parenting across 2 cultures, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more on how the world's wisest cultures quietly build children who are strong on the outside and known on the inside, subscribe. There's a lot more coming. See you in the next one.